The reason you are still afraid is not that you lack confidence. The reason you are still afraid is that you are chasing confidence. And the chase itself is what keeps the fear alive. Let me explain what I mean, because this runs deeper than you think. You have been told by books, by courses, by the voice in your own head that if you study enough, practice enough, backtest enough, eventually you will feel confident. And once you feel confident, the fear will dissolve. You will pull the trigger without hesitating. You will hold trades without panicking. You will follow your plan without second guessing. Confidence first, then execution. That is the model you are operating under. And that model is a trap. It is a trap because confidence is conditional. It depends on what happened recently. Win 3 trades in a row and confidence appears. Lose 3 and it vanishes. Any internal state that can be created by 3 wins and destroyed by 3 losses is not a foundation. It is a weather system. You cannot build a trading career on weather. You need geology, something underneath you that does not move regardless of what storms pass overhead. Mark Douglas arrived at this distinction earlier and more clearly than anyone in the trading world. While most educators were teaching traders how to find better entries and exits, he was asking a fundamentally different question: why do intelligent traders with verified edges still fail to execute their own plans? And the answer he kept arriving at was never about strategy. It was about the internal experience of fear, and specifically about the trader's misguided belief that they needed to feel a certain way before they could act correctly. That belief that the right feeling must precede the right action is the lie at the center of almost every struggling trader's psychology. If you are the kind of trader who wants to actually see the emotional patterns underneath your execution, not just track your P&L, but understand which beliefs and feelings are running when you hesitate, override, or freeze, that is exactly what the Speculator's Journal was built for. It gives you the structured self-observation that turns invisible fear patterns into something you can actually examine and work with. The link is in the description. But what I am about to give you is the foundation that everything else sits on: 7 rules that do not require confidence, because they remove the conditions that create fear in the first place. But before I give you the rules, I need to show you what fear actually looks like in your trading, because I do not think you fully recognize it. You think fear looks like one thing: freezing, seeing your setup on the chart, knowing it meets every criterion, and being physically unable to click the button. And yes, that is fear, but that is fear's loudest face. Fear has quieter faces that do far more damage because you do not even recognize them as fear. Fear looks like moving your stop loss further away. You tell yourself you are giving the trade room, but the truth is you are terrified of being wrong, and widening the stop delays the moment of confirmation. Fear looks like taking profits at the first sign of green. You tell yourself you are locking in gains, but the truth is you are afraid of watching a winner turn into a loser, so you grab what you can before the market takes it back. Fear looks like reducing your position size after a losing streak. You tell yourself you are managing risk, but the truth is you have lost trust in your own edge and you are hedging against your own plan. Fear looks like skipping a valid trade because you lost on the last 2. You tell yourself you are being selective, but the truth is the pain of the recent losses has made every entry feel dangerous. Fear looks like overanalyzing, spending 30 minutes staring at a setup that meets every criterion of your plan, switching to a different time frame, adding an oscillator you never use, looking for one more piece of confirmation that will never arrive. You tell yourself you are being thorough, but thoroughness does not add indicators. Fear adds indicators. How many of those did you recognize in yourself? I would guess more than one. And here is the part that should unsettle you. Every one of those behaviors felt rational in the moment. You were not thinking, I am afraid. You were thinking, I am being smart. That is what makes fear the most dangerous force in trading. It does not announce itself. It disguises itself as caution, prudence, flexibility, or intelligence. And by the time you recognize it for what it was, the damage is done. Mark Douglas observed this pattern across hundreds of traders. He worked with people who were analytically gifted, who could read price action with real skill, and who could not execute their own plans under live conditions. The common thread was never a lack of knowledge. It was that their real-time experience of fear was rewriting their decisions faster than their knowledge could intervene. The analysis said, take the trade. The fear said, wait. And fear won every time because the traders had no structural framework to override it. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking that the answer is obvious. You just need more screen time, more experience, more practice, and eventually the fear will fade. But it will not. I have seen traders with 15 years of experience who still freeze on valid entries. Because experience without structure does not dissolve fear, it just gives you 15 years of reinforced avoidance patterns. So let me reframe this for you. Let me dismantle the model you have been operating under and replace it with one that actually works. Here is the lie. Confidence is the prerequisite for fearless execution. Here is the truth. Confidence is the byproduct of fearless execution, not the cause of it. You have the sequence backwards. You think, feel confident, then act correctly. But professionals operate the opposite way. Act correctly regardless of feeling, and confidence eventually follows. It follows if it comes at all, not as a feeling of certainty about the next trade, but as a quiet trust in your own process. And that trust is not built by winning trades. It is built by following rules, consistently, regardless of outcome. The shift Mark Douglas introduced into trading psychology, and it was genuinely paradigm shifting, was the idea that a trader's goal is not to reach a state of confidence, but to reach a state of genuine acceptance of uncertainty. When you truly accept that any single trade can lose, that the outcome is unknowable, and that your edge only reveals itself over dozens or hundreds of trades, you stop needing to feel confident. Confidence is a feeling about what will happen. Acceptance is a recognition that you do not know what will happen, and that not knowing is perfectly fine. Fear feeds on the need to know. Remove the need, and fear has nothing to attach to. These 7 rules build that acceptance. Each one removes a specific condition that fear requires in order to operate. Eliminate enough conditions, and the fear does not disappear. It simply becomes a background signal with no power to alter your behavior. Let me talk about the first rule. Define your dollar risk before every entry. This is non-negotiable. Before you place any trade, you must know in exact dollars, not in pips, not in points, how much money will leave your account if the trade hits your stop. And that number must be a number you can absorb without it altering your emotional state, your next decision, or your day. Here is the psychology. Fear expands in the absence of boundaries. When you enter a trade without a precisely defined worst case, your brain fills the vacuum with catastrophic projections. You do not just fear losing the trade, you fear the undefined, and the undefined always feels larger than it actually is. Your nervous system responds to the unknown size of the potential loss, not the actual size. So a $200 risk that you have not quantified feels more threatening than a $500 risk that you have named, accepted, and written down. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, I already use stops. But there is a difference between placing a stop on a chart and translating that stop into a dollar figure you state out loud. Most traders skip the translation. They know the stop is 20 pips away, but they never say, that is $160. And I am fine losing $160 on this trade. The translation from pips to dollars is the moment where the risk becomes real to your brain, and reality is what your nervous system needs in order to calm down. Abstract risk creates abstract fear. Concrete risk creates a boundary, and a bounded fear is a manageable fear. Let me give you a worked example. You see a long setup on gold. Your entry is at 1,932. Your stop is at $1,926 of price movement. You are trading 2 micro lots, which gives you 60 cents per point. Total risk, $3.60. Before you click buy, you say aloud or in your journal, this trade risks $3.60. If I lose $3.60 today, nothing changes. My plan continues. You enter, and because you define the boundary before you step through the door, the fear on the other side is contained. It has edges. It has a floor. And a fear with a floor is a fear you can stand on. Let me talk about the second rule. Pre-accept the loss before the trade begins. This is non-negotiable. Defining the risk is intellectual. Pre-accepting the loss is emotional. And the gap between the two is the gap between a trader who can execute and a trader who freezes with their finger on the button. Here is the psychology. Fear is not a response to loss. Fear is a response to the possibility of surprise. When you enter a trade hoping it will work, you are psychologically unprepared for the alternative. And when the alternative arrives, when the trade moves against you, the surprise triggers a fear response that is out of proportion to the actual damage. But when you have already emotionally let go of the money before the trade is placed, when the risk amount is already grieved, already absorbed, already gone in your mind, the loss, if it comes, arrives into a space that was prepared for it. There is no surprise. And without surprise, fear loses its sharpest weapon. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, this sounds like expecting to lose. That pre-accepting a loss is pessimistic, defeatist, the mindset of someone who has given up, but it is the exact opposite. This is how every casino owner on the planet thinks. A casino owner knows that on any given hand of blackjack, the house might lose, and the casino owner does not care, because the casino owner is not playing one hand. The casino owner is playing millions of hands, and over that sample, the edge is a mathematical certainty. You need to think about your trades the same way. This single trade might lose. Pre-accept it. Let go of the money. Enter from a state of neutrality rather than hope, and watch how the fear drops away. Let me give you a worked example. Same gold trade, $3.60 at risk. Before you enter, you close your eyes for 5 seconds and say to yourself, these $3.60 are already gone. I am not entering this trade to keep them. I am entering because my process says to. If they disappear, my process continues to the next trade. You open your eyes, you click buy. And because the loss has already been absorbed, because it was processed before it happened, the trade feels clean, light, not burdened by the weight of hoping. Let me talk about the third rule. Never move a stop loss away from price. This is non-negotiable. Once your stop is placed, it stays where it is. It does not widen. It does not shift to give the trade more room. It does not move to a better level that you suddenly noticed after entry. It sits exactly where your plan put it, and it stays there until it is either triggered or the trade reaches your target. Here is the psychology. Moving a stop loss is the behavioral signature of fear winning in real time. It is the precise moment where your pre-trade plan constructed when you were thinking clearly gets overwritten by your in-trade emotional state. And every time you move a stop, you teach your brain something catastrophic. You teach it that the plan is negotiable, that the rules are guidelines. That fear, if it protests loudly enough, gets what it wants. Think about what happens when you negotiate with a hostage taker. The first concession does not end the crisis. It guarantees that the next demand will be bigger, because the hostage taker now knows that pressure works. Every moved stop is a concession to fear, and every concession trains fear to demand more next time. You are not reducing fear by giving in. You are increasing its future leverage over you. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking about the one time you moved your stop and the trade reversed and hit your target and you felt vindicated. But one favorable outcome does not validate a destructive process. A gambler who bets everything on a single number at roulette and wins is not skilled. They are lucky, and luck is not a repeatable edge. The rule is absolute. Stop goes where the plan says. Stop does not move. Not once. Not ever. Let me talk about the fourth rule. Score yourself on process, not on profit and loss. This is non-negotiable. At the end of every trading day, the only evaluation that matters is not, did I make money today? It is, did I follow my rules today? If you followed your rules and lost money, it was a good day. If you broke your rules and made money, it was a bad day. Full stop. Here is the psychology. When you judge yourself by P and L, you are tying your identity to something you cannot control. The market decides whether your trade wins or loses. You decide whether you follow your rules. One of those is within your power. The other is not. And when your sense of self depends on something random, you live in a state of chronic fear because every single trade has the power to make you feel like a failure. That is an unbearable psychological load, and it is completely unnecessary. But when you shift your self-evaluation to process adherence, fear loses its connection to your identity. Did you follow the rules? Yes? Then you did your job. The outcome is irrelevant. The outcome is statistical noise on the way to a larger sample. Your value as a trader is determined by your behavior, not by the market's response to it. And once that shift is made, once you truly believe it, not just intellectually, but in your bones, fear cannot threaten your identity anymore. Because your identity is no longer at the mercy of randomness. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, but I need to make money. That is the whole point. And you are right, ultimately, profitability is the goal. But here's the paradox. Profitability is the result of consistent process adherence over a large sample of trades. It is not produced by winning any individual trade. So by focusing on the process instead of the outcome, you are actually pursuing profitability more efficiently than the trader who checks their P&L every 5 minutes. You are building the cause. They are staring at the effect and wondering why it will not cooperate. Let me give you a worked example. End of day. You took 5 trades, 3 won, 2 lost. Net for the day, positive $42. Old framework. You feel okay, maybe slightly satisfied, probably already wondering if tomorrow will be as good. Now, try this framework instead. You review each of the 5 trades against your rules. Trades 1 through 4 followed every criterion. Trade 5, you entered slightly early because you felt impatient. Old framework says today was a win because of the $42. New framework says today scored 80%, 4 out of 5 trades compliant. Your assignment is to identify what drove the impatience on trade 5 and write it down so you can anticipate it tomorrow. The $42 is irrelevant. The 80% is the truth. Let me talk about the 5th rule. Commit to thinking in 20 trade samples. This is non-negotiable. Every time you take a trade, remind yourself out loud or in writing that this trade is one data point in a sample of at least 20. It has no individual significance. It cannot prove or disprove your strategy. It cannot define you as a good or bad trader. It is one iteration in a series, and no single iteration tells you anything meaningful. Here is the psychology. Fear draws its power from significance. The more significant a trade feels, the more afraid you are. And most traders treat every trade as if it is enormously significant, as if this one entry will determine whether they are profitable or not, whether their strategy works or not, whether they have what it takes or not. Under that weight, of course you are afraid. The stakes feel impossibly high because you have made every trade feel like a referendum on your future. But think about a coin flip. If I told you to flip a coin and I would pay you $2 for heads and charge you $1 for tails, you would flip that coin without a second thought. No fear, no hesitation. Because you understand, intuitively, that any single flip is irrelevant. The edge reveals itself over hundreds of flips, and no individual outcome matters. Your trades work the same way if you have a verified edge. Any individual trade is just a flip. But you have forgotten that. You have loaded every flip with your ego, your financial stress, your need to be right, and your fear of being wrong. And under that load, the flip becomes terrifying. The practice is simple. Before every trade, number it. This is trade 11 of 20. Track where you are in the sample. When you reach 20, evaluate the sample. Not a single trade within it, the sample as a whole. Did your edge produce a positive expectancy over 20 trades? That is the only question that matters. And during those 20 trades, you do not change anything. You do not tinker with the strategy. You do not add rules or remove rules. You execute 20 times. Then you evaluate. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking, what if I lose on 15 of the 20? Then you will have clean data, perhaps the cleanest data you have ever collected, showing you whether your strategy has an edge when it is actually executed consistently. And that information is worth more than any individual win. Because right now, you do not know whether your strategy works. You think you know, but you have never given it 20 consecutive trades of perfect execution. Every time you broke a rule, you contaminated the data. Every time you skipped a trade, you deleted a data point. The sample is corrupted, and you are making decisions about your future based on corrupted data. Stop corrupting it. Run the 20. Then decide. Let me talk about the 6th rule. Name your fears every morning in writing. This is non-negotiable. Every morning, Before the market opens, before you look at a chart or check a price, you write down what you are specifically afraid of today. Not in general terms, I am afraid of losing, is not specific enough. In concrete situational terms, I am afraid of taking another loss after yesterday's 3-loss streak. I am afraid of missing the move in Eurostace because I hesitated on the last 2 entries. I am afraid that my strategy is broken and I should stop trading it. Whatever it is, you name it. You write it down. You look at the words on the page. Here is the psychology. Fear operates most powerfully in the dark. When it is vague, unnamed, sitting in the background of your consciousness as a formless dread, it controls everything. It influences which setups you see, which trades you take, how big your positions are, and when you exit. It does all of this without your permission or awareness because you have not identified it. It is running in the background like a program you cannot see. But the moment you name a fear, the moment you pull it out of the shadows and write it in specific language, something shifts. Naming activates your prefrontal cortex. It forces rational evaluation. I'm afraid my strategy is broken. Well, is it? What does the data say? What is the win rate over the last 50 trades? What is the expectancy? Probably the strategy is fine, but you never ask those questions because the unnamed fear was doing the thinking for you, and unnamed fears do not do math. They just generate dread. I know what you are thinking. You are thinking this sounds like therapy, not trading. But that distinction is part of the problem. You have separated the trading work, charts, indicators, analysis from the personal work, your beliefs, your fears, your emotional state. And as long as those 2 categories are separate in your mind, your fears will keep operating unopposed. The fear inventory is not therapy, it is preparation. The same way a soldier cleans a weapon before combat, you identify your psychological vulnerabilities before you enter the market. It takes 3 minutes, it can save you thousands. If you want this process to go beyond a morning notebook entry, if you want to actually see which fears correlate with your worst trading days, which unnamed patterns keep appearing week after week, that is the kind of deep self-observation that the Speculator's Journal makes possible. It is what Mark Douglas could only ask traders to do through memory and honesty, turned into something visible and measurable. The link is in the description. Take a look. Let me talk about the 7th rule. Pursue boredom. This is non-negotiable. If trading feels exciting, you are doing it wrong. If your heart rate rises when you place an order, something is misaligned, your position is too large, your risk is undefined, your expectations are distorted, or some combination of all 3. The goal state for a professional trader is not excitement. It is calm. And calm, when you first experience it, feels like boredom. You need to learn to love that feeling because it is the feeling of fear's absence. Here is the psychology. Excitement and fear are not opposites. They are the same physiological state: elevated heart rate, narrowed attention, adrenaline release. Your nervous system cannot tell the difference between the thrill of a big potential win and the terror of a big potential loss. They ride the same wiring. So when you pursue excitement in your trading, when you want the rush, the drama, the adrenaline of a big move, you are also inviting fear. They are a package deal. You cannot have one without the other. The only way to exit the fear cycle is to stop wanting the thrill cycle. To let trading become the least exciting part of your day. I know what you were thinking. You were thinking that boredom sounds depressing, that the excitement was why you got into trading in the first place. And I understand that, but consider this: the thrill of being right is the same need that creates the terror of being wrong. They are the same coin. If you need the high of a big win, you will also get the devastation of a big loss. They are yoked together at the neurological level, and no amount of mindset work can separate them. The only escape is to stop wanting either one, to let trading be calm, methodical, procedural, to find your excitement elsewhere in your hobbies, your relationships, your life outside the screen, and let this be the thing you do quietly, the way a surgeon operates or a pilot flies. Not with excitement, with trained, deliberate calm. Think about the best surgeon you can imagine. They are about to perform a complex operation. Are they excited? Are they pumping their fist in the locker room? Of course not. They are calm. They have done this 1,000 times. They trust their process. They do not need to feel anything special before they begin. And the absence of feeling is not emptiness, it is proficiency. It is the state in which skill operates most cleanly. That is the state you are building toward. Not excitement, not confidence, calm. The practical rule is this: if your heart rate elevates when you place a trade, something is wrong. Reduce the position size until the entry feels boring. Boring means your nervous system is quiet. A quiet nervous system makes clear decisions. Clear decisions, repeated over hundreds of trades, produce consistent results. That is the path. It is not glamorous. It is profitable. Now let me bring all of this together. 7 rules. Each one removes a condition that fear requires in order to control your trading. Rule 1, define your dollar risk. Fear loses its ability to catastrophize when the downside has a boundary. Rule 2, pre-accept the loss. Fear loses the element of surprise when the loss has already been absorbed. Rule 3, never move the stop. Fear loses its vote in real-time decisions when you stop negotiating with it. Rule 4, score yourself on process, not profit. Fear loses its connection to your identity when your self-worth is attached to behavior instead of outcomes. Rule 5, think in 20 trade samples. Fear loses the weight it places on any single trade when that trade is one flip in a long series. Rule 6, name your fears every morning. Fear loses its power to operate unseen when you drag it into the daylight and examine it with your rational mind. Rule 7, pursue boredom. Fear loses the arousal it rides on when you stop chasing the thrill that shares its wiring. Do these 7 things every single day for the next 6 months. Not some of them, all of them. Not when you remember. Every session. And I promise you something will change. You will not become confident, not in the way you have been chasing confidence, as a feeling of certainty about the next trade. That kind of confidence is a mirage and always was. What you will become is something far more powerful. You will become indifferent to the outcome of any single trade, indifferent to whether this particular entry wins or loses. Not apathetic, you will still care about your process, your rules, your craft. But the outcome of the next trade, you will genuinely not care, because you will know down in your bones that the next trade is one of 1,000, and your job is not to win it. Your job is to execute it correctly and move on. That is what Mark Douglas pointed every trader toward for his entire career. Not the confidence that comes from a hot streak, but the clarity that comes from a framework so structurally sound that no single outcome can shake it. Not a feeling you need to summon, a structure you can rely on. That is what these 7 rules give you. Not the absence of fear, the irrelevance of fear. And an irrelevant fear is a fear that is already beaten. Remember what I told you at the beginning. Confidence is not the antidote to fear. Confidence is fear's twin. They are born from the same need to know what will happen next. Stop needing to know. Build the 7 rules into your trading day. Follow them without exception. And watch what happens when you stop waiting to feel something special before you take the next trade. You will feel nothing special at all. And that nothing is the edge. It has been there the whole time. You were just too busy chasing a feeling to notice it. If you want a way to actually track whether you are living these rules or just reading about them to see trade by trade, whether your execution matches your plan and which beliefs break it when it does not, that is exactly what the Speculator's Journal exists for. The link is in the description. Have a look when you are done here. Now stop watching videos about fear. Start building the structure that makes fear irrelevant. That is all there is. That is the whole game.